Well, what we know now is that in terms of the Immigration Act, Section 31, subsection 2B of the Immigration Act 13 of 2002, which reads upon application, the minister, as he or she deems fit, after consultation with the board, may, under terms and conditions determined by him or her, grant a foreigner or a category of foreigners the rights of permanent residence for a specified or unspecified period when special circumstances exist which justify such a decision, provided that the minister may exclude one or more identified foreigners from such categories and for good cause withdraw such right from a foreigner or a category of foreigners. This is the section of the Immigration Act that the minister says they have used to come to the determination to give this special exemption to Walus Janusz so that he can serve his parole in South Africa. Minister Motsoaledi joins us now to explain a little bit further. Good evening, Minister, and thank you very much for your time. Let's take it back a little bit to 2017. Why was the citizenship of Walus Janusz revoked? Why was he deemed an undesirable?
No, he was not deemed undesirable by anybody. What happened is that in 2013, he applied through the Polish embassy for the citizenship which was granted to him during the apartheid government to be revoked. In other words, he was doing renunciation of his own citizenship. And that application arrived in 2013 via the Polish embassy, which sent it through to Home Affairs via DERCO. Home Affairs did nothing, but in 2016, an official started putting up documents which led to his citizenship, starting with permanent residence being revoked. So it was not the department which started. It was a request.
Now, you have been in conversation with officials, and I'm presuming, as per the Act, you have been in conversation with the board in terms of the terms and conditions of having reached this decision of an exemption. What was your explanation? What did you give to them as an explanation of the special circumstances that have led to you making this determination?
Well, firstly, the manner in which in 2017, as you said, the citizenship was revoked was not legally valid. In fact, some of them were invalidated by the court of law. But be that as it may, in 2020, he then went to court to apply for parole. This present parole which he got started in 2020. Now, unlike before, in his applications before, this time, he said the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services is the first respondent. The South African Communist Party is the second respondent. Ms. Limpohani is the third respondent. And the Minister of Home Affairs is the fourth respondent. Now, in prayer number 4 of the notice of motion to that court, and I'm quoting Thabo, you must listen to this carefully. He says that in the event that this court, orders the release of the applicant here is Janusz, on parole, that the fourth respondent, and the fourth respondent is the Minister of Home Affairs, be ordered to make all necessary arrangements for the deportation of the applicant to Poland. Alternatively, the fourth respondent, being the Minister of Home Affairs again, issue such exemption as may be required in terms of the Immigration Act 2002 in order to regularize the application of right of residence in order for the applicant to serve such a parole period. Now, we then accepted this prayer. In other words, we granted it and say we'll agree, we'll do so. And in response, he writes back, and I quote again, he said, finally, I confirm my acceptance of the exemptions in terms of section this and that of the Immigration Act set out in paragraph this and that of the answering affidavit, and accordingly, I do not persist with the relief claim against the fourth respondent. That means he said, since you agreed, Minister, I'm no longer persisting with you as the fourth respondent. That's why in the High Court, Home Affairs was then not cited, and in the Supreme Court of Appeal were not cited. So what we are doing, we are just making good what was promised to the court in 2020.
So in essence, you're saying as per his request to say, either make arrangements that I be deported or give me an exemption to serve the parole here. You said, okay, we'll give you the parole to stay here so that you serve your parole.
We'll give you the exemption.
The exemption,
yes,
rather, to serve your...
Yes, we said, yeah, we said we are choosing the alternative, not the first one.
All right. And in your mind, this was in 2020, I suppose, were you anticipating that this would be the outcome of the processes, that the courts will finally give Janusz Waluś parole to be released after serving 28 years?
Remember, in the prayer, he specifically said, in the event that is given parole. So our conversation with him was in the event he gets parole. And our choosing the exemption was in the event we get parole. It has always been in our mind that there's a possibility of that, of course.
And the latest statement that says you are getting a sense from a statement that comes from your Polish counterparts that when he gets to Poland, he will not serve parole. Where does that come from?
It was in the Sunday Times.
Have you been in contact with the Polish government?
No, we haven't.
And why do you believe then that would be so, that he would not serve parole when he goes to Poland?
Well, we had no reason not to believe what the Sunday Times was doing. But anyway, we never thought there is any need for us even to find out, because Thabo, part of this whole thing was that this whole thing of deportation, I don't know where it comes from, because if you read the Correctional Services Act clearly, it says whether you are a foreign national or South African, if you are on parole, you serve it here where the crime took place.
Yeah.
So that's why there was no need for us even to conduct them. But obviously, our understanding was that they were saying if by any chance he gets released, when he comes to this country, the Constitutional Court has got no jurisdiction over our country. Yeah. And we also knew that we had no agreement on such issues with the Polish government. Yeah. Remember, some of this agreement is like repatriation and all that. Yeah. They are agreements between countries. And South Africa doesn't have such an agreement with Poland.
So I was reading in some of the reports that it actually emerged during court presentations that even a warrant for deportation was issued. Is there such a thing, to issue warrants for deportation? And what happens to that warrant with this exemption?
They issued a warrant, a deportation, not a warrant. We call it a deportation order, and also an order of removal. Yes, it was issued by Home Affairs. Then in 2017, the South African Communist Party in the Free State marched against it and said, no, we don't want this thing to happen. And that year, 6 months after that march, the Director General of Home Affairs withdrew it. But even after withdrawing it, the court still declared it invalid. They say that order of deportation and the order of removal issued by Home Affairs are actually invalid. So they were invalidated by a court of law.
So subsection 30, Minister, says the following foreigners may be declared undesirable by the department as prescribed: anyone who is or is likely to become a public charge, anyone identified as such by Minister after consultation with the board, or in case of urgency by the Minister, who in such case shall inform the board as soon as possible. Anyone who has been judicially declared incompetent, unrehabilitated, insolvent, and anyone who ordered to depart in terms of this act, anyone who is a fugitive from justice, anyone who has previous criminal convictions without the option of a fine for conduct which would be an offense in the Republic with the exclusion of certain prescribed offenses. At this particular point, I'll leave it there, of course it goes on. But is there a thinking that after this parole, you will then declare him undesirable on any of those grounds?
Well, I can't answer that now, but under ordinary condition with ordinary offenders, when a person who is a foreign national has been in jail in South Africa, after serving the jail, whether it's 3 months or 20 years, when he is due for release, 2 weeks before he is due for that release, the Minister of Correctional Services write to the Minister of Home Affairs, give him a list of these people who are due for release. And the Minister of Home Affairs start preparing for their deportation. That is those who have finished serving their sentence. The sentence is over, and we no longer want them to stay in South Africa. And I'm sure, Thabo, you realize that this is not the same. Waluś has not finished serving his sentence. He's on parole, and the conditions of that parole are going to be set by the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, and we don't know what the conditions he will say, what conditions he will put up. But the Constitutional Court instructed him, or advised him, or required him to make conditions for this parole.
Minister, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on tonight. That's the Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Motsoaledi.